You are now tuned into Flipping the Birds, a Philly Sports Network podcast.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of Flipping the Birds.
He's into the end zone. Touchdown, Eagles.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome all to episode 197 of Flipping the Birds. I'm Brian Cameron alongside Eric Reese, which I'm sure we'll be joined by more guests a little bit later on. But for now, it's over.
The chat's pretty much thinking exactly what I have been thinking. You just want to dive into this like head first?
Might as well. I mean,
it was brutal. It was everything I thought it would be. It was brutal. I watched the Flyers game instead. There, I said it.
So I actually watched the game. I was actually pretty hopeful, thinking that something possibly could pop off where this team actually could show some fight, but it looks like the team gave up. Honestly, that's not. The team gave up. The coaches just malpractice on what they did with this roster, with this talent that they had at hand, and I mean the offensive game planning just looks terrible. It kind of reminds me of when Doug Peterson was calling those verticals and those wild outs during his time when he was about to get fired. Defensively, as you've said multiple times this year, they're just a terrible unit, and it's coaching malpractice. It's poor roster management. It's just poor altogether for a team that was in the Super Bowl last season. As you can see, the chat is lighting up, and listen, you have every right to be frustrated. You have every right to feel very negative about the team right now because this is a team that has Super Bowl aspirations, and they're just ass right now. That's the best way to put it.
That's the colorful but easiest way to put it is that they are just ass right now.
But it's not so much the talent, though. And I think you might agree with me on that. I feel like this is more a reflection of the coaching staff.
Well, here's the deal. Out of everything that we've been so irritated about, both sides of the ball, pick it every way you want to. I would say tonight I was more impressed if I had to pick. Obviously, with special teams and the kicker. No, I was more impressed if I had to pick a side by the defensive side of the ball. Where's the talent lie on this team? Offense. So, yeah, all right. Like you told, basically what I was told tonight is defensively. I don't know. This is the best performance since Patricia's been a part of it, right? Would you say that?
No, they let 32 points. No.
Oh, it's still going. Okay.
It's still going.
It's still going. Yeah, I turned it off when it was like 25, brother. So maybe not. Maybe what I'm saying right now is just what I saw.
I mean, listen. At the half, they only had 16 points, which it looked like Patricia was putting something together. We saw a couple.
That's okay. That's what I saw.
Yes,
that's what I saw.
You saw the right thing. You did see something positive.
All right,
but it snowballed just like the Eagles season.
Well, then you know what? It all sucked, Brian. There you go.
It all just went downhill from the first half. And I mean, listen, nobody wants to listen to the negative show at the end of the day, right? Nobody wants to hear how bad this team is. You want optimism, but at this point, there's no optimism surrounding this team. Oh, wait, there is
one thing that was optimistic. It has nothing to do with the result of this game. Actually, it has everything to do with the result of the game. It has nothing to do with winning this game. Losing this game allows you to talk to coaches. We can start off with that being a positive thing because there's surely, look, this season's kaput. It is what it is. We're going to let off a lot of steam, whether over the week by just, water cooler conversations, talking to your friends, all that. Sirianni's got to go. Jalen Hurts this, Jalen Hurts that. It's going to be. I don't even know what you say about the defense, but you need to figure that out like fundamentally. But the offense, you can just say the same thing about. And the thing is, that's not who they fired in the middle of the season. They didn't touch Brian Johnson. They sat there and said Brian Johnson wasn't necessarily the issue. I still think it's quite an issue when it's, okay, even like at 3rd and 8 and you're going to wide receiver screen. Why? Why are you doing that? But also, 2 yards to gain and you're chucking the ball downfield? There's no gray area. It all sucks.
It was a terrible output by this coaching staff. I can't get over the incompetence of what we saw on the field today. And big shout out to Zach, who's joining us in his best flu game attire. Um, how you feeling, Zach? How you feeling about the game?
Don't answer that seriously.
It's good to
I don't know what I'm more sick about, my actual cold flu-like symptoms or this game, because it's
I think this game made you sick.
Either way, it's probably the game, if I'm being honest. Especially you look around at where this team should have been, 10-1 at one point, and to finish the regular season the way that they did, to just fall apart in the postseason. And it was all stuff that was evident during the regular season as well. There was just no semblance of adjustments. And every time that they, speaking specifically of the offense, found something that worked, they inexplicably went away from it just as quickly. I understand Tampa Bay has a good run defense, but they enabled that blitz to run endlessly by not establishing that run and not keeping the team honest. There's so many other ways that the coaching staff could have, and I'm not saying Hurts is blameless by any means, but there's so many different ways that they could have schemed to better, I don't want to say prepare or protect, but better enable him in that situation to perform closer to the level that we're accustomed to seeing him. So it was a very disappointing game from the top down, save for a few players who really stood out on even just one or two more key plays, because there wasn't much more opportunity than that. But it's one of the most embarrassing performances I've ever seen from this Eagles team.
So let's have an honest conversation, right? Because you mentioned honesty.
I'm ready for this.
Going into the offseason, which starts officially tomorrow, I think, the elephant in the room that has to be addressed is, what do you do with Nick Sirianni? Because it's not just a Brian Johnson issue. It's not just a Matt Patricia issue or Sean Desai. I mean, Sirianni said that it was his move to fire Desai midseason, which is terrible to do. It's also been reported that, hey, like, the offensive players don't know who's calling plays, and he's been stubborn enough to stick with his scheme. So going into tomorrow, if you're Jeffrey Lurie, are you looking at this team saying, yeah, we can run it back with the same guys? Or are you looking at this team like, hey, the greatest head coach of all time is quote unquote a free agent. You have cream of the crop of Jim Harbaugh, Ben Johnson, guys like that. Do you start this fresh with a fresh mind, or do you just go back and rinse and repeat?
Eric, I'm going to let you go ahead and take this first, but I do just want to say one thing. There is no way to connect the two words Belichick and fresh. Eric, go on.
Yo, give me Belichick fresh. No.
Let me get that fresh Belichick.
Yeah, let me get that fresh Belichick. No, I'm Belichick. I'm for it. I'm definitely for it. But my original pick actually might be Vrabel. Like, I think Vrabel is an interesting idea. I think he's a guy that players will play hard for.
He's like a Dan Campbell, I feel like.
Well, see, if that's a possibility, that would be sick. But I mean, is it? Like, like that? Like, as far as like, who could replicate a Dan Campbell? Like, is it Mike Vrabel? Because if it is Mike Vrabel, then that's the guy I want. That's what I'm going for. I don't think it's going to be like a Pete Carroll.
No, definitely not.
Right? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's going to be, who else is out there? Riverboat Ron. We've already tried that in Philly. Yeah. So why not Vrabel? And if not Vrabel, then I'm kind of really all in, and in Belichick. I mean, you might hate Belichick. People, he's hard to play for. He's hard to please, but he wins, doesn't he?
But it's the right combination, bringing Belichick here with a guy like Howard Roseman, who can draft, and you have Belichick, who can draft actual defensive players. Like, I feel like this can actually mesh and work well if it's the right staff, right?
You're out of your damn mind. All right, so here's why. So first of all, the odds of the two Huberses of Howie Roseman and Bill Belichick working together are 1 in roughly 18 billion. There's no shot.
The Eagles are obsessed with the Patriots.
One is constantly going to be trying to override the other. There's not going to be any semblance of peace in any of those meetings discussing about potential draft targets. Now, as far as some of the other names mentioned, I mean, Vrabel obviously is going to be a highly sought after coach. Eric, I absolutely understand why, the defensive knowledge that he brings, but on top of that, just the general intensity that he brings, true leader of men.
And
to the
AJ
heart of the
Brown
question,
guy, he was pissed off when they traded away AJ Brown.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that might even keep him here because a lot of things have to go for Brown to want to stay here. I think it's that volatile.
I think it's the coaching staff that
I
has to go
disagree.
for
I don't
Brown.
think we're
Brown wants
near
to
that
here.
point. I think that a lot's been made out of some typical frustrating fodder. I think that if we are just looking at a situation where Brian Johnson is not here and perhaps a more veteran voice on the offense is, I think that makes
I don't think that makes a difference, though, because this is, I guess I've been saying for weeks, this is Sirianni's baby. This is
and it works.
team.
And it works.
No.
Before.
Time out. When they went 2-5, it wasn't working. We all knew that. It was a big issue because it wasn't working. After that, Shane Steichen took over. Shane Steichen did exactly what they're trying to replicate now with these wild wide receiver screens. But when Steichen did it at an efficient rate that apparently they're not able to do now.
Apparently Brian Johnson isn't able to do. So what you're telling me is that it's been done before, but you're not telling me why it can't be done again, which is
it can't be done because Brian Johnson won for this season, right? But if Brian Johnson was being overridden in the season by Nick Sirianni, if the offensive players don't understand who's calling the plays,
but what I'm telling you is that this has been done before. What I'm telling you is that this can be done again because it has been done before.
So you're
whether
okay
or
with
not
Sirianni saying
was or was not overriding Brian Johnson, who I think everyone can agree has proven incapable of working this position as an offensive coordinator at this point in time. Can he grow into that role? Surely, of course he can. But at this point in time, he's proven that he's not ready for that position. So whether or not Nick Sirianni continued to override his play calling, we've known Nick Sirianni is not a functional play caller. We've known that since he first got here. But you can't tell me that if you bring in a true veteran voice, a knowledgeable offensive coordinator, that this offense, even if you stick with Nick Sirianni's offense, that this cannot be run efficiently because it has been done. It can be done again. You need the right voice. That's what they really need to focus on. And they need to figure out if it's worthwhile trying to do that or if they're better off cutting ties with Sirianni altogether. Because I still do believe in Sirianni as a leader of men. But heaven help you if you let that man touch the clipboard. He cannot be anywhere near the actual play calling. The play design, the schematic design is fine, but he just doesn't have the mind for the flow of the game. He doesn't have the ability to establish the flow that a quarterback needs, that Jalen Hurts needs. But veteran OCs have done that before, and they can do that again under the right circumstance.
Okay, so what if Brian Johnson is just a scapegoat this season? And Sirianni has been touching it nonstop all season long with the inconsistency that its offense brought. Like you're literally keeping possibly the guy who this is Doug Peterson all over again. The stubbornness, the not willing to adapt to any change. You're literally keeping that in house.
It's been one season and he's had an inefficient OC. You're giving me a lot of ifs and a lot of possibilities.
I'm just saying, but that's the whole point of thinking about the future, right? We got to think about the possibilities of it. If you stick with Sirianni and this team just falls backwards again, like what's gonna be the excuse next year?
Yeah, or if they bring in a veteran OC who actually knows what he's doing and he's able to have those conversations with Sirianni, he's able to enable that offense to have some sort of pattern, some sort of successful form. Well, then what do you do then if we have a successful offense next season under Nick Sirianni with a veteran OC?
Then I eat crow.
Sure. And I'll happily eat crow. Listen, if you want to fire Sirianni, that's all fine and good. I'm not a huge believer in consistency for the sake of consistency. But that being said, quality head coaches don't come along all that often. There's been a lot of rotation for the Philadelphia Eagles within the past 10-ish years. So you don't want to keep a guy just for the sake of keeping a guy, obviously, but there has been a workable pattern before. I don't think that this is the same level of arrogance that was seen in Doug Peterson. You have a guy who he tried to bring in his own guys. It clearly didn't work on both sides of the ball, mind you. And now this is where it's time for Jeffrey Lurie to step up and say, listen, this is what we're going to be doing for this year. Either you're in or you're out. And at that point, if Nick Sirianni's out, then by all means, move on. Like there are plenty of other head coaching candidates who at least on the surface seem like they would be good head coaching candidates. Ben Johnson being probably my favorite of the potentially available alongside Mike Vrabel. But You don't necessarily have to move on from the head coach, but there has to be some legitimate type of change here, because the fact of the matter is you do still have players who like Sirianni. You do still have players who listen to him. Winning cures everything. Like the fact that guys are upset and pissed off now, like they've lost. What is it now? Is it it's 7 of their last 8?
8 games.
Yep.
Yeah. So like no one's going to be happy. Like you can't just look at that and say, oh, you got to fire the head coach now. It's just what you do. You have to look at it, the complete picture of it. And so Nick Sirianni, is it possible that he could return as the head coach and the Eagles could succeed? It is possible, but you have to play your cards very right. And that's why I just don't think it should be completely written off, but it does have to be well thought out before you just go ahead and run into anything one way or the other, keeping or moving on from Sirianni.
Fair point.
I think my thought about how, and like the very first step into telling me like where you should go with a head coach would be the result of today's game. If you can win against a team where and you're in the postseason, and this is a team that hey, you're supposed to turn around here, you're supposed to win. Now, this is a team that you beat earlier this season, right? You've proven you can do it. So like, let's go ahead, let's get out there, get right, do it again, and we'll see what comes up the playoffs. Because that doesn't happen, I'm ready to move on from everybody, every last one of the coaches. If now they did beat
Jeff Stoutland notwithstanding.
No.
Right,
You cannot touch Jeff Stoutland. Nobody can touch that man.
I'm talking about the coordinators and Sirianni. Now, as far as maybe if they won tonight's game and you go in and lose next week, then maybe I'm talking about a short leash still on Sirianni and just the coordinators are going. But right now, dude, get rid of everybody. Get rid of every last one of them. And let's start from scratch and figure out who's going to do what and figure out in the room first. That's how you start winning.
And speaking of somebody we can't get rid of, welcome back to the show, Mr. Chris Infante.
Hold on. Cheers.
I work early tomorrow. I can't do that.
He stole my bet. Lord help me, he stole my bet.
First of all, I'd like to formally, I said this on X earlier. I'd like to formally apologize to Nathan Gary. The linebackers tonight made him look like primetime Patrick Willis. It's compared Gary to Cunningham, Morrow, anybody you wanted to put in that fucking linebacker core. Gary is a first ballot Hall of Famer. Second, thanks for having me on. Third, I get this whole thing about, from both sides about how, Sirianni did this and that before the season started, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, we've seen a guy, and I was on a few weeks right before the Eagles-Bills game. I was on a podcast for the Bills-Eagles preview, and they were like, what do you think about Sirianni? And one of the hosts there actually knew Sirianni personally from growing up in Western New York, and all that stuff. He was like, he's always been that guy, a fiery guy. He'll go for his players, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, he's the type of guy that you'd love if he's on your team. You hate him if he's not on your team. Completely gone from that at this point now, because the fiery aspect is great. But this is a guy, like, I have a legitimate question of it if he is the Carson Wentz of coaching. Because very successful early on in his career, very promising, had everything around him to be successful, but when shit changed, where shit got really real for him, he was stubborn to say, no, this is the way I want to do things. And we saw what happened with Carson Wentz with that. Carson Wentz saw coach after coach come in, said, nah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to play this way. I'm not going to throw the ball. I'm not going to throw the ball away. I'm going to just do this and take this sack and do this fumble. Sirianni is, you know what? Hey, there's a blitz right there. I see it. I see the blitz right there. But I'm just still. No, I'm not gonna just give my guy any hot routes. I'm not gonna do this. I'm not gonna put this into the playbook to do anything for hot routes. Hey, 3rd and long, 3rd and short. Well, I'm gonna change it. No, I'm just gonna throw a fucking screen pass to Kenny Gainwell. No, he has quickly evolved from Mr. We're going to plant these seeds in this garden and see what happens to I'm the smartest guy in the room. You can't tell me otherwise.
And then now with that thought process for Sirianni, being that it's only, it's been 3 years that we've had Sirianni on this in the organization, if I'm not mistaken, correct? This is his 3rd year?
Yes.
Okay. Do you move on at this point, being that there's actually a fresh crop out there where you have a Ben Johnson, you have a Mike Vrabel, you have a Bill Belichick? Eric has a question.
There's the door. Right there.
There's a nice toy you got there, Eric.
No, that's not.
Yeah,
asshole.
But,
My one thing here, listen, Chris, after everything that you said, a lot of it could also have been said about Doug Peterson. And I don't disagree that moving on from Doug Peterson was the right move. At what point does this become an issue beyond coaching? That we've now had back-to-back coaches that have followed this exact same pattern, this Carson Wentz pattern that you said. Where's the real issue? Because these coaches have had early success, but they have this one down year. The team moves on from the coach after one down year. When does that cycle end? Because every coach is sure to have one down year. Even Brian's beloved Bill Belichick sucked ass this year. Let's not forget that.
Hey, respect Double B, okay?
But to go off on that, I would be okay with a down year if we saw changes made, like adjustments trying to be made during the season. Like it wasn't a down year because everything he was trying to do just kept failing over and over and over. And then he needs to just change everything up. It was a down year because he refused to change. Like you were fucking 10-1 because of a fluke loss to fucking Zach Wilson. You were 10-1. And now you just lost to a team that should have had now they have the 4th overall pick. You lost to a team that has the 6th overall pick in the Giants, 7th overall pick in the Giants, and now you lost to a team that was that you beat earlier in the season, that it was 9-8, that had no bit that needed to have all these different scenarios to win the division. Like you lost to bad teams 3 games in a row, really fucking bad teams 3 games in a row after you were heavily favored, except for this one. I think they were 3 points, whatever. You were heavily favored versus the Cardinals by double digits. You're heavily favored against the Giants, double digits, and you were favored against the Bucs. And you saw player after player I'm using this for everyone except for Bradbury. You saw player after player just not care. And I think Bradbury cared. He just sucks now. So it was a collective effort of players just really trying to get into the off season. It looked like healthy and not have to go through a rehab process. And we saw, now Slay's probably going to have a lengthy rehab, whatever came out. I'm not sure anything came out from that yet. You saw Goddard now is going to have a lengthy rehab going into the off season. So at what point do we see, I think if any coaching style, like we look at the last 2 coaching cycles, Doug Peterson and Nick Sirianni, not crazy, attractive coaching candidates out there. They had their favorites out there, this and that.
They were the randoms that popped up in
we know that Peterson, they wanted Hugh Jackson, they wanted Dable. I think they wanted Dable, and they wanted all these different guys. No, I think Dable was recent. Sirianni.
Dable was the Sirianni, but they wanted the other guy from the Giants.
They wanted others that weren't they were hot commodities at that point, but they weren't the crazy big names that are out right now. I think if Lurie I don't care about Howie right now. If Laurie wants to make a statement and say, no, the next guy I'm getting is going to be the guy we're going to have for the Andy Reid of the next cycle, it's probably this cycle, because you have a really hot commodity in Ben Johnson in Detroit. You got Joe Brady, who I've been fucking banging the table for the last, I feel like, since he's been a hot commodity.
I felt the table.
You got Bill Belichick. You have all these guys here that are just, they are guys that like to motion, like to do things that Nick Sirianni doesn't want to do. So if you're gonna make a move, if you're gonna be the Jeff Lurie that we all know who Jeff Lurie is, and be, hey, this is the guy we need to lead our team. And I mean, I think that Lurie needs to change to a defensive guy, for just my own personal opinion, but. This is the time, because this is fucking bullshit. I can deal with a loss in the playoffs. I can. That's fine. We've dealt with it for so long.
But the historical collapse, I think, is what turns everything on the back end.
Horrible collapse. You lost who was it? I think it was Kevin Kincaid who said yesterday something about resting the starters would have conceded the division to the Giants. No, that division was conceded when they lost to fucking Drew Lock. And then they lost to the Cardinals, and they lost again. That was when it was conceded. So you were 10-1, driver's seat for the number 1 seed, driver's seat for the division, with games to go. Like there was cushion there. But
I'm going to say, right? They were an 11-6 team that finished played 8-9. They played 8-9. They finished 11-6.
All right,
that's the team. That's this identity.
Before we move on, Brian, 2 quick things off of what Chris said. First of all, as far as switching from an offensive coach to a defensive coach, I know we all love defense. This is Philly. We love good, hard-nosed defense.
Lurie won't do it, though.
Is what we're all about. They went to 2 Super Bowls and won 1 in recent memory. So on the back of 2 offensive coaches, that doesn't mean nothing. And second of all, on top of that, when you look at the coaches that you're saying, that the hotter names than what the Eagles hired, but not quite as hot as the names out now, if the Eagles couldn't land those milk-warm names, what gives you confidence that they can land these even hotter names? Obviously, this team should be a desirable landing spot. This team still has a future. But
I think this time around, I mean, it's easy to say that now because hindsight and all that stuff. But you look at
history, but yeah.
Well, you look at when Doug Peterson was hired. He was hired with what? A high draft pick. He was Sam Bradford. He was hired with a lot of uncertainty around the quarterback position. He was hired with a rebuilding year in mind. Sirianni. Sort of the same way. Sirianni was coming in when we knew Carson Wentz was probably out.
And Jalen Hurts was part of trade rumors.
Right there to blossom and all that stuff. Those 2 teams that these coaches inherited were young and were like, you know what, we're probably going to have a couple years of a down year or something. But whatever coach is looking at this team saying, hey, it's time to move on for Nick Sirianni. We need a coach to come in here that's innovative. You have Jalen Hurts, who had a who regressed this year, but you look at this guy, he's probably hurt all over the place. He was still kind of slinging it today with a broken finger. You have AJ Brown, he's not going anywhere. There's $40 million reasons of he's not going there. You have Devontae Smith, who next year is going to be going into a contract year. If you still have Dallas Goedert, who I know Eric hates, but you have Dallas Goedert, one of the top tight ends in the league. Even if
why would I hate Dallas Goedert?
we won't bring the chat out into this, but
right, damn it, no, I don't hate him.
You're still gonna have a pretty decently top of the league line out there, even if Kelsey retires. I have a strange feeling Lane's thinking about retiring, but even if he's back, you slot Jurgens into center, you put Steen at right guard, and you still have a pretty decent offensive line. So whatever coach is looking at jobs out there, instead of taking over a Panthers team have a number 1 pick anymore because they traded it to the Bears, who the Falcons, because they just are the Falcons, the Raiders, who whatever else is out there, the Patriots. I mean, not the Patriots, they have Mayo. All these other teams, maybe the Cowboys, but you're looking at all these other jobs out there, and you're saying, are these teams going to, set me up for success as a head coach early and often? It's going to be the Eagles, So the big fix of this team is going to have to be the defensive side, because Bradbury can't tackle me, and Slay's. Who knows what's going to happen with Slay now, especially after this injury? The linebackers are horrible. Defensive line, who knows if Cox is going to come back? He's a free agent. Who knows if BG's not going to retire? He's a free agent too. You have all these young guys on defense that are hungry, but if Byard is going to be back next year, he's going to be a year older. But an offensive coach like Ben Johnson comes in, Joe Brady comes in, all these different guys, even oh my God, Greg Roman. You get a defensive, Greg Roman comes on to help. He likes mobile quarterbacks. I think he just interviewed for the Bears job, for the offensive coordinator job. He likes mobile quarterbacks. So you get all these guys to come in. There's no rebuild here. It's just a retooling of the defense to get them better, and an offensive coach that will finally tap into this offense and say, hey, it's 3rd and 2. We're going to run the ball with DeAndre Swift, who just gave us 2 carries to start the game for 20-something, for 15, 16 yards. They're not going to just go away from it. We need guys to come in here and say, you know what, my shit's not working. Let me get some, feedback and change it up.
They need somebody to come in and actually build an identity of this team, which this team has no identity of right now.
Just looking at, hey, that linebacker's coming right there, so let's change it up. Instead of having all these guys right here, we're like, oh, you know what? Screen. It's ridiculous. And
it's definitely coaching malpractice, but I think something that we may have to touch upon is that not too many people want to really discuss because of how he's done in recent years. By the way, if you're in the chat, make sure you guys like this episode. Definitely put a thumbs up and put a comment in as well. Howie Roseman. I mean, he did neglect the defense, right? We know the offense was coming into this offseason. They were built, they were prepared to go, but the defense, from the linebacker core to the safety, losing Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, to signing Darius Slay and James Bradbury. James Bradbury was a complete dud this season. Some of the blame has to go to Howie, but at the end of the day, I mean, how much accountability do we expect to hear or even see outside of behind closed doors in relation to Howie Roseman at this point?
Brian Dawkins just tweeted out, Brian Dawkins, this team never developed an identity on either side of the ball. When you go into the playoffs, you should know who you are and what your bread and butter plays are, and you should be excited. And that is the damn fucking truth. Because how many times this last few weeks we've got the cliches out of Hurts, out of Sirianni, out of all these coaches like, well, now it's time to see who we are. It's fucking December and January. Like that's like September, October, okay, fine. Maybe early November when you're going through a little rut. But it's December and it's January. If you don't know who you are by now, it's safe to say that we know who you are, and that's crap. Like,
I mean, it was a little bit frightening to hear that we haven't even played our best game yet. Detail from the 10-1, 10-2 era that we were still thumping our chest about. I mean, come on, it hasn't changed. There hasn't been the adjustments that was promised every week. You got fans literally yelling the adjustments on Twitter. Like, you got McCaffrey doing a media spot going, hey, that's what they're doing. And then they're right often. I mean, come on.
We're just preaching to the choir about what's wrong with this damn team today. Like
it feels like we've been doing that for the past 10 weeks. It's like we've told you what was wrong with this team. They should just watch this podcast and maybe, you know what? Make me GM. Do it.
Well, this is why the problems are bigger than just the head coach. I mean, this is organizational from the top down. I mean, really, it starts with Jeff Lurie. There's more than one issue to solve here. I mean, even during your pitch to why a coach would want to come here, Chris, we talked about some of the big foibles of the GM this past year, and you have 2 aging corners who are committed a lot of money in the upcoming years. You have another aging safety in Kevin Byard, who's again, committing a lot of money with a young offensive line. And I don't think anyone took what Cam Jurgens did tonight as a sign of encouragement moving forward of him at the center position. Obviously, he's played much better than that before, but it was definitely a rough night. There's a lot of work that needs to be done with this team, and you hope that come next year with a new, whether it's an offensive scheme or play caller or motivation, signal caller, whatever the case is. Hopefully that fixes some things. Hopefully some changes with the personnel. Obviously, they need to bring in a linebacker for crying out loud. Just finally, it's time to bring in any capable linebacker.
Years have we said this?
Exactly. But that speaks to the organizational malpractice. Where it's not just this one season. A lot of it's just the culmination of these mistakes that the organization has been making for years and years and years, and they've compounded, and they've not had the voice inside the franchise to correct some of these issues this year, which has been the issue. So there's also the issue of what does Jalen Hurts' relationship with the rest of the team look like going forward? I mean, obviously everyone saw Dallas Goedert's reaction. That seems kind of like a heated moment kind of a thing.
Yeah, which is normal.
I wouldn't be too worried about specifically that, but these things can snowball, and if it's not rectified next season, then they can continue to eat and eat. And a guy like A.J. Brown, I'm not necessarily worried about, just with his especially close relationship with Hurts off the field. But at a certain point, you can't just keep assuming that everything's going to be fine. Everyone's going to go back to being family after next week. Like, you have to actually at some point try and solve these issues.
And it's okay to have those tough conversations within a locker room of guys that actually care about each other. And I feel like that's why bringing in a guy like that, a new head coach with a new staff around them, a new culture that you're embedding into this team, a new identity that you're bringing in, like that's extremely necessary at this point right now, because you have talented guys where you have a Jalen Hurts, you have Devontae Smith, you have A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert. Those guys alone could bring you to deep in the playoffs. If you re-sign DeAndre Swift, you have that. Defensively, if you can actually build the right way, where you get veterans or even rookies. Keely Ringo was looking a lot better than James Bradbury this season, and they kept taking him out of the game. But defensively, you can actually put your head together and actually take your head out of your ass and move forward. I mean, this team is right there on the cusp of being a Super Bowl team once again, and I feel like the window is just right there, and that's why you have to make the necessary move of bringing the right guy in.
I don't think we see Byard back next year.
Definitely not.
We see Slay. I don't think we see Bradbury, because I'm on overthecap.com right now. Byard, if they just cut him after the new year starts, you're saving $13 million on the cap. Yeah, dead money is $1 million. You're saving $13 million. He's getting cut. He's gone. You're looking at post June 1 cuts. Slay's $10 million on the books, but there's no negative cap. There's $0 there, and you're looking at Bradbury. He's $4 million against the cap.
You eat that money. I think it's $12 million the next year.
$0, $12 million the next year. Howie he traded Wentz for $30-something on the cap. That he's fine with that. I think you're looking at three big money. I mean, Byard's not really big money because of the trade, but you're looking at three, older guys on defense, probably not here next year. You're looking at Graham's probably retiring. Maybe Cox is not coming back. So you're looking at a whole revamp of this defense, and you need someone to develop the guys that are there now. Nolan Smith looked really good today. Outside of that one, like he could have got the guy like 10 yards deep or whatever, but like. He's an edge rusher. Like he's not going to catch up with that guy. He looked really good tonight. Jalen Carter all year. I didn't really like all the jawing he did today. Every time Rashad White went up the middle, Carter had something to say. Mm-hmm. But Jalen Carter, if I love him. I personally don't think he should be rookie of the year, but that's my thing. But he's going to be a dominant force for a really long time. Milton Williams, Jordan Davis had his questions this year, but you have all these really young guys who can be really fucking good. You just need a Bernard Wilson from last year who really just the guys bought into that. and the defensive coordinator spot to say, hey,
Or even the guy from the Cowboys, the cornerback coach.
Al Harris. Al Harris, like he just made not Darius Bland into like all pro. I mean, I know he wasn't all pro, but he played like one this year.
Right.
Outside of being cooked every now and then, that's just him and Diggs. Like him and Diggs just get interceptions and then get cooked the next time. Like I hate giving the Cowboys credit, but now that they're out of the playoffs, I can. But it's they had really good coaching all year, and the injury to Diggs really caught up to them. They have Diggs, they're probably playing next week, but at the end of the day, coaching matters, and Al Harris got the best out of their players. We saw last year, Bradbury was an All-Pro, Slay was a Pro Bowler. We had great secondary last year. Great's a stretch, but we had much better compared to this year. They were great, and with Denard Wilson, like it's just malpractice what's going on there. And I really hope Laurie has done a lot of great things for this team, for this city. He's done he's not Jerry Jones. He's not, but at the same time, I hope he's not Jerry Jones, the fact that, no, I can just fix everything and just be his own tunnel vision, because that's Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones is like, no, we're going to do this, this, and this, and this. We're going to win because we are the Cowboys. Jerry Laurie cannot say, hey, we're the Philadelphia Eagles. We've been to 2 Super Bowls in the last 6-7 years. We're going to keep doing what we're doing and just get there again. That doesn't happen. There's too many really good teams in this league. This league has too much parity. It is not the NBA. It's not the MLB. There's not, these teams that are powerhouses are going to win every other year. Teams in the NFL, you can just lose to the Bucs. You can just lose to the Cardinals. You can just lose to the Giants. It just happens, So Laurie really needs to say, you know what? How much longer he's going to be around to own the Eagles? How many years Howie Roseman still has? Their successor to Howie is probably going to be gone after this year to the Panthers. So what's going to be going on now?
So if you're just joining us now, the Eagles are eliminated from the playoffs. Their season is over very shortly. I guess we go final thoughts and just wrap up the podcast at this point, just because it's time to get the offseason started, which I'm pretty sure we're going to hear rumors swirling as of tomorrow, leading into possibly next week, as the Eagles have to make some big decisions within their personnel. So Eric, final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, when I heard a quote, I guess it was Aikman who said it on the broadcast.
Can I just interrupt? Brandon Graham announced he wants to be back for one more year with the Eagles, so he's not retiring.
Okay, good. So we at least know that question.
There it is. That's one
question.
Yeah,
at least we know the answer to that one. But yeah, like Aikman said, as the game was in the fourth quarter, and it was way out of the reach, obviously, by that point. But he said they'll finished the season losing 6 out of their last 7. Who saw this coming? And quite frankly, I thought tonight's performance wasn't surprising, and I don't know if it would have been as surprising even if A.J. Brown was healthy to play, because I look at this team and in my eyes, and I don't know, I'm not speaking for anything that's inside that room because I've never stepped foot in it, but in my eyes, it seems that the effort on the field, with the exception of a few, is lost. And it's lost, and I don't think they're playing for each other. And by each other, I mean the coaches. I think that means a lot, and that has to be addressed first and foremost. Of course, that means we're going to be talking a lot about, who's going to be on the hunt as far as which coaches are going to be available for or maybe even want to come to Philadelphia in general. But I think that it comes down to cleaning house, and there's going to be a thorough amount of changes, not only with just coaching, but player personnel as well. So, yeah, we got a lot to talk about. And this team, I mean, next season, when you look at the schedule, don't get too high and mighty.
Completely agree with that. How you feeling, Zach? What's your last thoughts of this?
Yeah. Man, the season sucked. Listen, if they decide they want to move on from from Sirianni. That is fine. Be damn sure that you can get a Vrabel or a Ben Johnson, and that your plan is not just to bring in a Thomas Brown. Like, no shade to him, but like, you need a guy who's like actually proven something.
Thomas Brown's my number one. What the fuck, man?
So you got to bring in somebody who's proven something. So we'll see how this offseason goes. It's going to be a long offseason. Quick note on Brandon Graham. I love the idea of bringing Brandon Graham back. It's tough to envision this team without him. Great veteran. I can't commit another $8 million to 3 sacks. So hopefully there's a little bit of negotiability on there, because that's one thing that and Fletch performed a little bit better this season, but the Eagles have done a great job of paying these guys for work they've done, which not every team does. And even if you continue that somewhat, that's fine and good, but there needs to be some level of cap space created this offseason to address some of these issues. And there are issues that the front office has forced themselves to be in, but even still all the same, there's a lot of change that needs to happen, not only in the coaching staff, but on the field as well. So hopefully they can figure it out, and hopefully these 3 picks in the first 2 rounds of the draft can actually contribute in year 1. We'll see.
That's fair. Chris, last thoughts?
So, to correct the Chuck Hutton, this guy here, as I know, Alec Hallaby, who is the successor to Howie, it looks like he's going to the Panthers. So, that's my whole thing. Like, if something's gonna happen, we got to figure it out soon, because the successor is gonna be leaving soon. So, who is gonna be after Howie? But yeah, it's it's crazy how high we were this season, record wise, feeling wise. Like, hey, we just Super Bowl, and look at us going. We're just chugging along now. We're gonna get going here, and how low we are now. Like, next year is not gonna be easy. Like, just looking at next year's schedule, obviously the division games, but you add in the AFC North now. You're at Cincinnati, you're at Baltimore, you're facing Pittsburgh, you're facing then you have Washington twice, at Cincinnati, at Baltimore, at New Orleans. You're facing Atlanta, you're facing Carolina, you're facing the Browns, who've been very good this year. You're facing the Steelers, who are a scrappy defense, TJ Watt. You're facing at the Buccaneers again this year. The next year, you have the Rams, you have the Packers, and you have the Jaguars. You have really good teams on the schedule next year.
Mm-hmm.
You have no time for a down off season. You got to retool. You got to get back at it. And this idea of Vrabel and Belichick is great on paper, but like we just said, Lurie does not like defensive coaches. It's just his thing. So as much as I think they'd be perfect fits, both of them, I think they'd both be perfect fits. It's going to be an offensive guy. If Sirianni's gone, I think he should be gone. But it was evident at the beginning of December, and I tweeted this out, and I was half right, and I hate saying I was half right, but it looked like at the beginning of December, this team was just playing to just stay healthy. There was no effort whatsoever. They were just a team that said, hey, this is our record. We're just going to coast along to the playoffs and hopefully win the division. Hopefully, maybe number 1 seed, but let's just stay healthy. And they got their asses kicked by the 49ers. They lost to Seattle. They got their asses kicked by the Cowboys, and they lost to really bad teams the last 3 weeks. And what happened? People still getting injured. So they weren't playing to their full potential. Maybe they were, but it was a potential of Sirianni. But this, like, it's crazy to think that as a fan base, yesterday we were all laughing at the Cowboys, and deservedly so. But like, all these Cowboys fans were like, "Oh, you better hope you beat the Bucs tomorrow." But as collectively as a fan base, we're like, "We know we're gonna lose." So it's like,
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
it didn't hurt us. Like the way they were coming at us, like it didn't hurt because we kind of knew this was gonna happen, and that's sad. Like the fact that this team was 10-1, and on January 15th, we were and 14th, we were like, man, we're gonna lose anyway. Fuck the Cowboys, you guys just lost. So like, we had aspirations of another Super Bowl run, but it quickly turned to, hey, we're just happy to be here, type of thing. So it's ridiculous, and this is not the way this team has been the last few years. We've always had some hope, with more hope than most, but this was the first time in maybe since Wentz's rookie year that we were like, hey, whatever happens this year is whatever happens this year. Even Hurts's quote-unquote rookie year, his first full year as a starter, had some pretty decent hope because he had played the last 4 games of 2019 or 2020, and we're like, hey, he looked pretty good even though he lost. Maybe let's see where it goes from here. And they made the playoffs, and they got their ass kicked by the Bucs, but they still made the playoffs. But we still had some hope there. And then Super Bowl, and now here there was zero hope coming into the playoffs. It was like, hey, maybe we win. Maybe we'll get a ball bounce our way against the Bucs. And it just didn't happen. And it's been the time since 2016 for me.
And not Tom Brady in the Bucs, Baker Mayfield in the Bucs.
Traveling quarterback Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
Well, I'll leave you guys with this. 10-1 team, followed by a historical collapse, to questions surrounding literally every single person on this roster in this organization. And it's going to be a hell of an offseason. But, yeah, until next week, I'm Brian Cameron, alongside Eric Reese, Zach Javalella, Chris and Fonzie. Thank you for joining us today, man. Everybody else out there, get some rest and just watch this off tomorrow, and definitely enjoy your week. And, yeah, we'll see you guys next Tuesday.
Go Birds!
Yes, sir.
I have my Sundays back.
Flipping the birds.